When you ask people what edge compute is, you get a range of answers. Cloud compute and DevOps with devices and sensors, with semiconductors outside the data center, including connectivity, AI, and a security strategy. It's a stew of technologies that's powering our vehicles, our buildings, our factories, and more. It's also filled with fascinating people that are passionate about their tech, their story, and their world. I'm your host, Pete Bernard, and the Excelsior Show makes sense of what edge compute is, who's doing it, and how it can transform your business and you. So let's get started. So this only records audio, by the way. So this video is just for...
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is for our interactive purposes.
Interactive. It's all about the vision at the end of the day. Come on, man.
That's true. That's true.
Okay.
Which I guess is why the audio quality is even more important. Because,
Yeah, probably. Yeah, okay.
Doing, right?
All right. Sounds good.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah. So Leonard Lee, we get started, and I was actually recording a show earlier today, and I forgot to introduce who the person was for about 30 minutes into the discussion. So I thought it might be good to just start with that, and then we can go from there.
Well, you know, I mean, I did my hair. I put on a black
Yeah, you look great, by the way. Just
neck.
everyone should envision you looking great. That would be good.
Yeah. Mac in the background.
Yeah, no, I see that. You got a Mac back
and my
there.
tricks right here.
Yeah, that's cool. Cool. So Leonard, thanks for making the time. I was
Absolutely.
maybe you could give a little background on yourself, but I was also going to say thanks for the time because you seem to be in like 4 or 5 places at the same time these days. So
yeah,
you're
it
super
certainly
busy.
fethink like it. Definitely the previous 2 months, which were really hectic. I think I had like 7, 8. Actually, there was a number of events that I didn't even really write about that I was attending. And there's a ton of analyst briefings that I also attend. So yes, Leonard Lee. I'm the executive analyst at neXtCurve. It's a firm that I started 5 years ago, going on 6. Can you believe it? And so I'm an independent analyst and consultant for the broader TMT, Uber, and interconnected industry. That I call it a mega industry of technology, media, and telecoms. And so, very fortunate to have a firm that is persisting in what is actually quite a challenging industry, right? Which is the independent analyst industry, if you can even call it that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can imagine. I was going to say, I mean, one of the things we can talk about is how do you prioritize what to talk about? Because there's so much going on between semiconductors and AI and 5G and edge computing and yada, yada, yada. And like on any given day, I mean, so what is it like for you? Like, how do you do that? How do you prioritize? You're mentioning all these different shows, analyst briefings.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting. It's like going to, well, you know, just first off, your audience probably doesn't even know who the hell I am. So I'll a little bit further into that, not wait for 30 minutes until we answer the question of who the hell is Leonard Lee. Yeah, and so I've been in this consulting tech industry analyst game for 30 years. And so I've been doing it for a while. You know, toward the latter part of my career, I was getting into a lot of the industry research as well as strategy consulting that I think characterizes the work that I do with neXtCurve. But prior to that, I was in technology consulting as well as all the digital transformation stuff that everyone loves to talk about for 20 years. So, you know, in terms of the technology, I have an intimate knowledge and feel for it just because I actually had to, manage large teams and then myself implement these technologies in helping enterprises, large organizations, right? do all this funky digital transformation stuff that we just love to talk about, right, Pete?
It's endless.
Right, Pete?
Yes, it's endless.
Yeah. Yes. So that's who I am, and
Cool. And you're based in Southern Cal. You're a Southern Cal
San
person.
Diego, San
Nice.
Diego, muggy, Florida-like San Diego.
Yeesh.
Yes,
That's
I
unusual.
know. Yeah, didn't pay for that.
It's about 80 degrees and nice. We're having this little window of really nice weather in the Pacific Northwest, which I am eternally grateful for, because you don't have to go too far on the news to see a bunch of places I don't want to be. That's for sure. So yeah, it's been crazy weather out here, but San Diego is a beautiful place, as everyone knows. And and have you been there most of your life, down in San Diego, the Southern Cal area? Or?
Yeah. For 25 years. Long time, right?
Wow.
I went to school here. I graduated from UCSD, and that was a long time ago. I don't want to date myself any more than I already have, but I've been here for a long time, and now, I think I'm ready to address your first question, Pete.
Oh, yes. So how do you prioritize all the incredible stuff that's happening? I saw you did a post yesterday. I listened to the Qualcomm earnings call last night. We can talk about it. But I can't just imagine, how do you kind of, budget your time?
Yeah. Well, Pete, it all boils down to experience. I mean, I always, when people ask me that question, I said, man, come on, guys, I've been doing this for 30 years. I have 30 years of experience. You have experience. Right. You have a blueprint through that experience of how to look at things, right? And I think one of the things that has made my career, when I tell people about my consulting career and my career and industry research, people go, wow, you did a lot of stuff. And so, yes, I've done a lot of stuff. I've worked with a lot of different companies across different industries, dealing with a wide range of technologies and, and delivering a lot of different types of solutions, right? Whether it's through custom app development or ERP, CRM, the thing that we got so excited about in the early 2000s, which was e-commerce. And, it's just all this long, thick, juicy continuum of tech evolution. Living through that stuff, you develop a blueprint. Right. Of how to look at things and prioritize things. So, think about it as kind of like training an AI.
Yes, that's right.
Right? It just takes 30 years to basically, fine tune and optimize all the weights in that neural network that's called the brain. And, eventually you start to, I think you just develop a sixth sense of what to look for. And again, I think, with all the fascination of generative AI, I think what's even more fascinating, is the human brain and how quickly we can adapt to how things are evolving in something like the TMT industry or the tech media, because media is moving really quickly as well. Sure. Telco. People will argue it's not moving that fast, but you know what? From a technology perspective, it's amazing, right? You mentioned Qualcomm, all the stuff on the RF end of things, which a lot of people don't understand, don't really look at. It's just incredible innovation. All that translates into some amazing impacts that wireless has in the way that we look at computing, right? But even underneath that, when you look at what's happening with silicon and semiconductors, the innovations there are enabling all kinds of crazy stuff. So, like people talk about 6G and, hey, we're going to use terahertz. It's like, well, maybe not. It really depends on silicon, because, when you start to deal with things like terahertz, you're talking about ridiculous filter and sample rates and is it really going to make sense? And a lot of that is, and so you just really have to consider the entire stack from really semiconductors all the way on up to these applications that people talk about that are hypothetically going to change and revolutionize the world, right? And
Right.
so, yeah, over time you develop that kind of that kind of lens that helps you prioritize. And but I think more importantly, you have a structure to work with that shapes that lens, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think it's like discernment. I think you build discernment over time where you can sort of separate the wheat from the chaff or whatever the metaphor is. It's like, oh, that's the thing. Like that's going to be an impactful thing. And sometimes it's I always love it when I see a combination of technologies come together to create something new, right? That's kind of the magic is like, oh, there's that over there and there's that over there. And when those things combine, it creates a whole bunch of new capabilities and stuff. That's pretty cool when you can see that too. I guess that's part of the experience too.
Well, I mean, and that's a lot of what you've done with some of the contributions you've made to neXtCurve, right? You're looking at 5G, edge computing. How are things evolving in those two fronts? And what's that new stuff that could potentially form that can create new potentials and opportunities for us to do even more cool things than what we do today.
Yeah. No, it's like peanut butter and chocolate. Sometimes that combination is pretty good. So no, it's kind of I agree with you. It's about discernment, and you get that. It's almost like we're doing our own sort of pattern recognition of
exactly
that looks like it. And sometimes that also can help companies if you see something that maybe you can smell it's a little overhyped. It's like, hey, let's poke on that a little bit and see what the actual value prop is to the customer and to the company.
Well, there's a reason why crap stinks, right? Yeah. And if you have you don't, quite honestly, you don't have to have that finely attuned nose to sniff it out. But there's a lot of perfume being used these days.
Well, we're the tech world is addicted to hype cycles. We have to always be in a hype cycle about something, and then of course people jump in and create all kinds of incredible future scenarios that scare people or excite people or both, and
exactly,
and that drives VC money and marketing money and all kinds of weird money and stuff. So have to be careful.
And that's a different stack that you use to shape your perspective as well, right? Because you're absolutely right. These hype cycles are really interesting, and I'm pretty well known for my point of view on hype and the cycle itself. And I think a lot of the folks that I work with, companies that I work with, they know my stance as well. And so I don't see hype as really being necessary. It's just an outcome,
right,
of what is clearly misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree that people get a little bit educated and then they sort of run with it, and then they're way off base from reality.
Well, they become aware of it. I don't know if they're actually educated about it, because what you do is you see a lot of folks look at an emerging technology or get a sense of an emerging technology, and then they start to
extrapolate.
And envision what the potential can be. But it's oftentimes those types of hyperboles that are crafted that are largely, if not almost always, devoid of actual recognition of the state of the technology and what its path to forward, the roadmap is for that technology. And so there's so many examples of technologies that have gone through that hype cycle, and I'll tell you right now, generative AI is one of them. No doubt. There's no doubt.
I was looking behind me for my book, Nicholas Negroponte. I remember this book he wrote called Being Digital. many years ago, and he said there's a quote in there saying, we tend to overestimate in the short run and underestimate in the long run. The impact of these things, right? So we get, like with generative AI and things like, we get with these big stories and hype cycles about what's happening tomorrow, but then on the other side, sometimes we don't really understand the longer term impact of some of these things. That's happening farther down the road, right? We kind of tend to undersell it a little bit in the long term and oversell in the short term. But
right, and this is what I find oftentimes happens early on the cycle. The folks who are quote unquote visionaries will use that axiom to basically, in a way, shame the naysayers and saying, "Hey, look, you're not open-minded enough." But actually, what happens is that over time, as people get disappointed with the technology because they've been seeding these, sort of unreasonable and exuberant expectations, they overshoot on the downside. So they become extremely disappointed by it, not tuning into what the actual technology is capable of and where value applications reside. Even during the hype part, what I call the hump of nonsense, during that phase, they don't tune into it. But so for instance, with large language models, definitely, some, really interesting, potentially valuable applications. But here's the problem. They typically are not as sexy as what's being sold into the hump of nonsense, that's creating the hump of nonsense. So, actually, the people who underestimate the long-term benefits or impact of the technology, right, are the same people who did the hype. Because they're the ones poised to be most disappointed by what they sold in the front end of this.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they've created the proverbial hockey stick of the hockey stick of growth.
And so and that's the purpose of neXtCurve is like, hey, why don't we just cut through the hump of nonsense or just shovel that stuff to the side of the road and just let's be sensible about what we can do with technologies and being grounded in how we can translate the technology, its evolution into valuable applications rather than subscribing to things that are exaggerated that you can't deliver. And then, these applications that you simply can't deliver on because the technology is not in the state of supporting those hypothetical applications. It's like, let's just be reasonable about this. And, and that's, but again, and one of the reasons why I think one of the things that I think has helped a lot in my background is because I've basically been a career solution architect. Literally, it's your job to look at emerging technologies, vet them, and then figure out where they fit in the portfolio, and then how does it deliver value to the business, and that whole art. And I do really call it art because architects are very underappreciated in this world. It's been valuable. I think it gives you a really great set of skills, and all the architects out there are going to agree with me.
There you go. Yeah, of course. No, there's always, any good science has a little bit of art to it as well. There's always a good combination there. And, the creativity part of it. I mean, that's another thing. I always feel like the creativity part of the tech world is always undersold. And there's a lot of creative folks out there. And, you have to be creative in figuring out how these things would really, fit together and do a little bit of envisioning. But, and then the way people are communicating, I mean, you do a lot of communicating, a lot of writing and speaking, and there's an art to that. There's an art to taking this kind of complex stuff and kind of landing it with meaning. And that's an art to it. When I used to interview folks for my team at Microsoft, I would always ask them, I said, give me an example of something creative that you do. I don't mean like creative with a spreadsheet, like actually creative. Do you sing or paint or play guitar or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
And, it's kind of unusual. People would be like, what? So, being creative like that is like an important part of getting the job done, is being a creative person.
So yeah,
I'm a little biased because both of my daughters are very creative liberal arts people. One's a painter and one's a songwriter.
well,
And
you're a musician, right?
and I'm a musician. We should talk about that. But the creative element, I think, moving forward, being a creative person, I think, is going to be a super important attribute, especially even in the tech world, right?
Yeah, but I think we don't want to put too much pressure on people on the creativity front. I think it'll be good for certain folks.
Yes.
And other folks, they'll be good at something else.
That's true.
I mean, it's like innovation, right? It's like, hey, we need to innovate. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, no, you also need to execute.
Yes, that's true.
You're really good at executing and doing, just mulling over and being
detail oriented, getting it done.
About the detail. Yeah, right. Because creative folks, you need latitude.
Yeah, that's true.
A little bit of that. You know what I'm saying?
They don't always get a lot of stuff done, right?
Generative
yes,
latitude.
Yes. No, it's a balance like that. You need teams.
Yeah.
I'm working with someone, and this company I'm working with, and it's a strategy process. And I told them it's only about 5% strategy. About 95% is going to be executing on the thing, which is not glamorous, but it's the most important part. And if you can't execute on it and really land the details and grind through it, then your strategy is kind of a waste of time.
Yeah.
So there's a balance out there of getting the stuff done, but also, sometimes being creative about how to get things done too. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. But yeah, speaking of guitar, by the way, we should have a little sidebar on that. I see a guitar behind you, and we're not visual here. And
yeah.
You can see some guitars.
I have a bunch. I have like a whole wall of guitars over there.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah.
What's your favorite these days in terms of
guitars? Well, there's a company that was called, or is called Carvin. They spun off their guitar, the guitar part of their business, and it's now called Kiesel, which I didn't know. That's the original family name of the company, of the folks who started Carvin, and they make amazing guitars. And it was weird. I was gonna buy a PRS, Paul Reed Smith.
Yeah, sure.
But then I thought, hey, why don't I just like order a custom guitar? I'll just go and check out the Kiesel. Before Alan Haldsworth passed away, I had a chance to meet. I just found him hanging out at a blues bar.
Wow.
Up in Tustin, of all places, and he's just sitting there. I'm noodling around with my Steinberger, and he walks up and he puts his ear to the headstock, and I'm looking at this dude, and I'm going, I was like, who is this guy? And he goes, keep playing. And then he looked up, and I went, holy. This is Alan Haldsworth, right? He let me play a prototype that he was designing with this up and coming luthier up in Hollywood, and he goes, here, you try this out, check it out. And so I got a good feel for the stuff that he was developing, right? The guitars that he was developing, what he liked, and we talked for hours actually, and I'm surprised he spent that much time with me. But that's what this guitar that I ordered feels just like the thing that the prototype guitar that Alan had let me play on stage, actually. Wow. And amazing story. I can't even believe I lived those moments, but I'm great guitar. And great company. So anyone out there who wants, Kiesel, and they're very well priced for a custom guitar.
Okay, I'll have to check it out. I'm playing. I'm mostly a Fender person, so I have the Fender Strats. I got the Mustangs, all that stuff. But I fairly recently got a D'Angelico kind of semi-hollow body. Which I really like because it sounds a lot different, than the Stratocaster. Of course, got a different tone and stuff. So I really like that. Yeah, it's like a nice black D'Angelico. And then I have behind me, I think I have my Mahogany Martin back there.
Oh, wow.
Guy back there, and actually the Strat's back there too. Yeah, so
Sort of,
kind of behind my microphone. Yeah, no, it's a great. I've been playing since I was, an early teenager, and it's always fun. And actually played with my band at a gig in Squim, which is a little in the San Juan Islands up here, a couple weekends ago. We had a nice. It was like a neighborhood festival that they have every year up there.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we played like 3 sets, and beautiful outdoor show, and cranked it all up, and it was a lot of fun. So
yeah, dude, I saw a couple of videos, man. You're pretty good.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you guys jam. It's great.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, no, it's fun. It's fun to find people to play with too, and
yeah.
So yeah, I always encourage folks, if they can do kind of a musical thing, it's just a good way of exercising your brain a little bit differently, and the tech out there, it's all about the gear, right? So you get the guitars and the boxes and all the gear. It's always about the gear. So that's a nice fun hobby.
Let's not even. We can go on forever about that.
Yes.
I mean, I'm a gearhead when it comes to guitar equipment and everything else. So
yes, it's kind of a bottomless.
I mean, come on,
bottomless pit of money.
Freaks, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we can go on and on about gear. It's just like tech, actually. It's really weird that you bring that up. And then, I've told folks at Qualcomm, it's weird. RF is a lot like, audio. When you go to a NAMM show and you look at all the equipment they have, and then you look at the stuff that like the telco guys are using, or, the mobile wireless guys are using in their network. And it's like, wait a minute, there's a lot of similarities,
Yeah. And, vibrating the air, at the end of the day.
Basically, right? Yeah, sending waves through the air. So, it's kind of cool. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, well, that's good. So what else has been kind of catching your fancy these days? I mean, obviously there's the AI stuff. Let's talk, maybe there's something besides AI that's kind of on your mind these days that's been a hot topic.
Yeah, I mean, I've been writing about quote unquote edge computing for a long time, right? And the cellular 5G, 6G, blah 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 stuff. And what I think is really interesting is how now, I would say the last 2 years, maybe a year and a half, there's a lot of talk about edge computing and hybrid cloud.
Yes,
right? A lot, not. And, we're seeing this material shift in how we think about computing, because it was so cloud centric with
the pendulum really swung that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And then now it's just, it really is starting to go the other way. And so I think that's one of the things that I've been actually doing a lot more work, but referring to the work that I've done prior, the research notes that I've published, and so a lot of that is becoming very relevant today for a lot of folks. So it's kind of cool, to be able to leverage stuff that you wrote 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, sometimes like the tech is catching up, right? So now the semiconductors are more powerful, the networks are faster. Yeah. So, I kind of call it like the deconstruction, of the compute fabric, right? We had this big pendulum thing to everyone move your workloads to the cloud, get rid of the cloud. And then it was like, well, actually, we could actually run them on-prem too in some form. And we actually run them like nearby, not on-prem, but like close. And, it's actually this cascade of compute capabilities now that are possible, depending on your latency, sovereignty, cost issues.
Exactly.
There's a lot of different ways to the taxonomies now are much more complicated and flexible, because the tech can now support it. You can do some amazing, compute on the edge. I mean, I know Qualcomm was talking about generative AI on the edge, and which, is a whole other thing, but it's just giving, I think, companies and developers a lot more flexibility in how they develop and deploy tech. And so that's kind of, it's sort of becoming more real now, like deployment.
Yeah. and going back to what I was mentioning before, for the architects, it becomes like a new buffet. You're not going to, let's say, the old buffet. It's all of a sudden there's all these new cuisines that are introduced into all the trays. You have more sections, you have like a Mexican section, Chinese section, Thai, you have like pizza,
more things
a lot more stuff to choose from.
Yes, exactly. Which, is good. But also I think from, I know working with a lot of the Fortune 500 companies, it's almost too much. It's almost too much tech.
Yeah.
Too many different ways it could be stitched together, and, helping companies sort of find that right recipe to take is it's complicated.
Yeah. But, there's a lot of new tools that are coming out. I mean, they talk about FinOps a lot nowadays. This is like the old school, cloud economics and transparency stuff from like a while back, right? It wasn't a big deal because at the time, just everybody was just kind of spending money on cloud. Didn't really care about how much the stuff really costs and managing the costs. And then now it's become a thing. And so, but it's not what's your cloud spend, but where is the best place to place that workload, or should we migrate that app? What do we need to do? And so this whole question of the optimal place to place things has become a lot more complicated, right? But I think we're going to see a lot of tools start to surface, and a lot of this has origination or origins in like, pretty old CMP or cloud management platform brokerage kind of, application type stuff, right? That's where it really comes from. So it's not net new. It's just that these things that people were working on a while back are now starting to be valuable tools, right? Or maybe not so much, but then a lot of the, I think a lot of it has to do with this bigger question of, now that cloud seems to be everywhere, meaning now we have these edge clouds and it's much more distributed, like you said, hey, maybe these tools could be useful in helping us manage our portfolio and our strategies much better. And so, I think there's like, sort of like a lot of the orchestration capabilities, for workload orchestration, is becoming much more prevalent now. As I was looking at, it's getting much better.
Some companies
there's focus on it. I don't think
people are trying to make it work, and it'll get there. But of course, as you go lighter and lighter edge, it gets a little trickier and trickier. But no, it's pretty cool to see that, and then. The other thing that I saw too is I'm seeing a lot more emphasis on like simulation and emulation. So how do you take a complex system like this and simulate it? So you can figure out the right taxonomy and workload. I'd love to see, I haven't seen it yet, but I'd love to see some kind of system that also brings some of that FinOps into it as well, where you could actually start to model your costs and your latencies and your, that would be pretty cool to see, from like hyperscaler to like near edge to on-prem, and like, I'll tweak it here and do this. I don't know. Maybe I should go do that.
Are you about to say digital twin? I just have this funny feeling
right
you're
on
just
the edge,
dying to say digital twin.
right on the edge of digital twin. No, it's some cool stuff that putting that stuff together. It feels like it's getting there. It's getting really close, and like you said, there's a lot more. It's one thing to kind of get it working, and then you try to really optimize it, and you're really realizing where your spend is, and you're like, well, maybe I can be a little smarter now and sort of optimize and tune that deployment to make it a little more cost effective. Instead of moving everything to the cloud and just doing it up there, and you get this huge bill, maybe there's a way to have a little more control and financial control too, and optimization there too. So
and it's super tricky, right? I mean, you need a lot of data points. And it's always changing. Again, going back to what I mentioned before, cloud brokerage, right? Because cost performance, it always changes, and it's different for workload. instance type. It's like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of, and so people are, I think largely most IT organizations are just starting to learn this stuff, but it was fun to kind of cut my teeth on this stuff, working with some, really brilliant, quite honestly, brilliant CIOs who were sort of cloud naysayers, weren't bought into this cloud first thing, which ended up being the worst thing any CIO could do. Yes. They were more of like a cloud smart. It's like, let me figure out, okay, this is familiar. I know what's happening here with the evolution of, IT service delivery platforms and technologies, but let's figure out how the economics work out.
Yeah,
and so the guys they hired guys to work these problems out. And so they when you looked at their cloud strategies, they were already doing what VMware's CEO was touting on stage, smart cloud,
right.
Being smart about it, not being cloud first. It's like it's the age old discipline that every architect should embrace, is do what is right and make sense, literally, for the moment.
Yeah,
because things always change, right? You always have to evolve your the way that you're managing, you're viewing your portfolio. It's how do you do the right thing, and then having the tools to help you make the right decisions and put things in the right places. But it's about to get even more complicated with all the edge cloud stuff, cloud native, all the way literally on a device.
Yeah. No, that's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting. I think the other intersection that I thought was pretty cool, talking about intersecting technologies, is I've been looking at this intersection of a lot of kind of the environmental factors, like electricity and water and stuff like that, and then compute
stuff. Yeah,
and there's like there's a train wreck. It's like a collision course between environmental resources powering these incredible intense AI workloads, right? And like I don't think people have really grokked the fact that this stuff isn't free. Like when you go generate images on Dolly and stuff, you're burning trees or something like that. I don't know what the metaphor is, but I don't think people get that yet. And I think someday, at some point, maybe the EPA will make you label your software to say you're now burning 5 trees, for doing this thing. But it's a fascinating intersection.
Well, it's already happening. It's like I kind of this is a few months back. I kind of pushed this idea of sustainable AI. I might have actually been the first person to create the hashtag on LinkedIn, but nobody was talking about how expensive it is to actually, basically process a token on a large language model application. It's like, look, this stuff is not cheap, and it's also not the best way to do a lot of things. I jokingly have posted on LinkedIn. I was like, look, if you want to know what 1 + 1 is, don't ask ChatGPT. Use a freaking calculator.
Yes,
much more efficient. And the point being, AI is not good for everything, right? Actually, a calculator is much better at figuring out what 1 + 1 is, much more energy efficient than asking ChatGPT.
Especially a solar powered calculator, even better.
Yeah. Oh my God. Dude.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean,
talk
about energy harvesting, dude. You're like,
there you go.
Yeah, you got it, man.
So, it's
a lot of people are doing that. They're doing that with the brand. Ericsson, they're showcasing, hey, look, we can power a DU, a distributed unit, and a radio with solar power.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
deal.
Yeah, I mean, all the investment in grids. I think I heard something. It was like $275 trillion being invested in power grid over the next 10 years or something. Yeah. Power grids around the world.
Make microgrids a thing,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be private power grids. That's going to be the next kind of digital divide. Is, are you on the public grid or do you have your own grid? Because companies will want to have their own power that's predictable and always available. And so will some folks too. I'm sure the Kardashians will have a hydrogen power unit stuck on the side of their house in the next episode or something. And that's where it's all heading. But yeah, no, it's an interesting thing. It's not in people's conscious yet, but like you said, sustainable AI, that's a thing. So we'll see where it goes. But
I mean, if anything, it's going to be the primary factor that prioritizes a generative AI.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the moment it's just heavily subsidized, right?
Oh yeah, it feels like it's free. It's Copilot this and Copilot that and whatever, and
not going to be
not free. So
in fact, the question of monetization is a big question mark. No one really knows. I don't care what anyone says. They don't.
Well, I think Microsoft said $30 a month per user. That was their number.
Well, that's what they think. Whether or not they can actually get it is another. But nobody really knows what the value of this stuff is at the end of the day. It's just you will know the cost a lot. And then you'll see that, and that's where people will start to understand, oh, this is what we're dealing with. Okay, not quite what we thought. And then
reality,
the quote, what we started with, right? Happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, but it's been fun. I appreciate you coming on the show here and
having me. Yeah.
Talking about the stuff, the edge compute stuff, and the sustainable AI stuff. I think those are hot topics, and also a little insight as to how do you sort your mind for those of us that are sort of soaked in it. Yeah. How do you prioritize? Yes, it's discernment. I guess maybe that's the end of the day. Discernment.
Yeah. And thanks for having me. I think you're onto something. I think the focus that you've had, especially lately on the 5G edge, a lot of the edge stuff that you're doing is really great.
Cool.
And
thank you.
Best of luck with all of that. I think you bring some really great perspectives to audiences. Hopefully all around the world.
I hope so. Yes, hopefully international. And we'll have to get together and play some guitar at some point.
Oh, definitely. We have to have you on IoT Coffee Talk. And
yeah, sure.
We'll see whether or not latency matters.
Yes. There you go. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, cool, we'll figure it out.
All right, sir. Take care. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today on the Edgecelsior Show. Please subscribe and stay tuned for more, and check us out online about how you can scale your edge compute business.